From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and John Meoli. And if you are watching along live on X and on YouTube, you are getting a brand new view of the Banner Baseball Show from a brand new room that is set up entirely for the purpose of podcasting. I have no idea if I'm correctly streaming this right now, John, and people can let us know if they are watching along live, if they can hear us, if they can see us. But I'm going to be switching between cameras here. Call me a truck operator, a game day producer, or director, because this feels like my old days at Masson. I'm switching between cameras. We're getting microphones. We're legit, or semi-legit operation.
Paul, like, this room is for you.
It's built for me.
How do you feel about that?
If my name is not on the door at some point, I mean, I think I have grounds to sue, you would think.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be... I think if they had to put your name on the door, it's because you kicked it. So like your estate would have to sue. But I think that if our choices are that, you know, you eat it and you get this room named after you, or we can just live in the glory of knowing that they built this room for you. And let's be honest, a little bit for me too. That's good too. A little bit for me. Just
a little bit for you, but a good amount. I mean, you know, who would I be without you? Who would each of us be without each other?
I would be less than I am without you. Wow. You would be about what you are without me, I think. I don't know that I add a lot here.
I disagree there. I think this is like a Wicked situation. You know, who can say if I've been changed for the better? But I know that because I knew you, John, I've been changed for good.
I understand the reference.
I thought that was such clever wordplay.
I understand the reference, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you've got a... 3-year-old daughter? You understand
4-year-old.
Wicked.
Yeah, we're probably gonna do some Wicked. That seems like the type of thing. If I had to, not to gender anything, but like it seems like a nice thing that like as we get into this 2-kid world, like I might stay home with the little boy and like my wife might take her to see Wicked. Yeah. And that's not to say I don't love a Broadway show. I do. You have
show. Seen some Broadway shows, right?
Yeah, I saw Dear Evan Hansen when it was like in its first run. That was great
with the original cast.
Yeah,
with Ben Platt.
Yeah, with Ben Platt. Pitch Perfect's Ben Platt.
Yeah.
We saw more recently Chicago with Ariana from Vanderpump Rules, which was awesome.
Wow. You know, I love Chicago.
Yeah.
Both the city and the musical.
Yeah. And I love Vanderpump Rules. That was really
I've never seen Vanderpump Rules, I'll be honest.
It was a moment. It was a moment that lasted a little too long and then got really good at the end again, but it was definitely a moment.
Okay. All right. Well, John, we'll talk about musicals more on some later episodes, perhaps once we get deep into spring training and there's not much to talk about and we're just getting boring games every day.
Yeah.
But today, we're going to look ahead to spring training because it is right around the corner and we have 10 questions to ask each other about this team as they prepare to head down to Sarasota in a week's time when pitchers and catchers report. But first, John, we got to talk about how this outfield seems to be growing by day. The Orioles added Ramón Laureano on a 1-year, $4 million deal with a club option for $6.5 million for the 2026 season. This comes just about a week after the Orioles signed Dylan Carlson. John, that move made a lot of sense. You say Dylan Carlson could be your 5th outfielder. The Orioles, if Jorge Mateo starts on the injured list, you could definitely see him making the team. Does this feel like overkill now? Do we have too many outfielders? Is this too crowded a group all of a sudden?
It doesn't. It feels like it on the surface. You know, and I wrote this for the BaltimoreBanner.com, which I understand after you say that. You say you can subscribe for 6 months for $1.
Correct. Usually $1 for 6 months, but nonetheless, the point comes across.
Yes. You know, it makes me think of like, this is going to be like year 5, honestly. Not year 5, year 3 or 4 of being like, wonder what the point of like Jorge Mateo and Ramon Urias are. Because you go into it and you're like, they don't really need these guys. Like, they have X prospect and they have this young guy who can get a big role. And then every year they play significant parts on the team. Like, they start for months at a time. Somebody rolls an ankle and they play, and somebody goes into a slump and they play, and they're valuable to have. And last year the Orioles didn't end up having Ryan McKenna in the picture anymore. They traded Austin Hayes because he was overqualified for that role, and they ended up having Austin Slater as like the outfield version of that. And like now the outfield version of that is Ramón Laureano and Dylan Carlson, and that's not something that you're like, we need this, but like you don't need it until you need it, and they are going to have like a pretty viable guy who you're not going to feel super fantastic about. Like if he's playing every day for 2 months, but he's playing twice a week for 6 months, like you're gonna feel good about that. I remember in the Joey Rickard era, as he was like trying to make the team as a Rule 5 pick, I had a scout explain to me like fourth outfielders aren't like always good or always bad. Like they just need to be like good enough to, like, if they get hot, they can play for 2 weeks and you're not going to kill you. And like once they get cool, then they go back to the bench. And like having those options is going to be really, really valuable to the Orioles. And as we talked about with Dylan Carlson, like if not him, then who? Like Ramón Laureano is just another step above that. But like if these guys didn't exist, we're talking about NRIs, we're talking about minor league free agents, we're talking about prospects who aren't ready and haven't shown that they're ready. And at that point, you are in trouble. So like this is just kind of erasing the possibility of that trouble.
Right. And I think it's important that you mention the prospects coming up who aren't ready, because we're used to this team having a bevy of prospects who are ready and who are being blocked. I mean, at this point, a couple of years ago, you were talking about this stacked outfield group where you already had Hayes and Santander and Mullins, and then you're talking about Kjerstad and Kauser. Where are those guys going to play? And you had Connor Norby, who had outfield versatility. You had Kyle Stowers at that point. This is a way, in signing Carlson, in signing Ramón Laureano, this is a way to make up for the loss of a lot of those prospects. The Stowers and Norby trade that sent them to Miami. You no longer have that depth there. You're going to have to rely now on Kauser and Kjerstad to be big-time contributors in 2025. And when you talk about prospects that could be contributing down the road, Judd Fabian, Dylan Beavers, they're probably not ready. So it shows just how thinned out that prospect group has become, that you are having to rely on 1-year contracts to Dylan Carlson, to Ramón Laureano in order to add depth to the outfield. You can't just rely on having the number one farm system anymore. I think it's a solid pivot, because that's what you do. That's what most good big league teams have to do, is they have to sign guys to 1-year deals, 1-year big league deals, in order to add some depth to a position group where they already have some starters, but they could use a little bit more. Yeah,
I mean, we talk about like Mike Elias used the words last week that this ownership group liberated them to do their jobs.
Liberated was a great word.
This is that. Like the most liberated thing you can do is spend like $4 million on like a pretty good, halfway decent like guy who might sit on your bench more often than not.
Right.
And as we talk about this, there are possibilities that like things are happening behind the scenes that we don't know. When they traded for Corbin Burns last year, it was not common knowledge or known that Kyle Bradish hurt his elbow. And that was, they can say those things are unrelated, and then that might be true, but also to me, they feel related, and that's my truth, and I'm going to keep it.
Yeah. I think it's hard to say they were unrelated.
Yeah. And, that's not to say that, like, Mike Elias said last week that he plans to give his Here's Who's Hurt update standing outside the Baseball Operations Center in Sarasota next week, and that's when we will find out the truth on that. But we can always hold the possibility that someone is not going to be available in the way that they thought they were. I feel less open to the idea of there being a trade because, like, people talk about like a Heston Kjerstad being somebody who was traded. You don't really keep a Heston Kjerstad for as long as the Orioles have, just to trade him when you finally need him. Right. You don't also, I believe, if you're the Orioles, trade a Heston Kjerstad when you have traded all the players that you have traded, because he is a player, like, he's on a different timeline now than the rest of, these peers that are, going to be hitting their prime and arbitration and free agency, earlier than him. Like, he is now a little bit delayed on that. Like, he is part of the next wave, even though he's part of the wave that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So, like, it feels a little less likely that they would sign like a guy who projects as a platoon player to trade somebody on the opposite side of that platoon. But I've been wrong before, and I plan on being wrong. Yeah. Just not on this.
Right. And I think the injury comments are, like, the injury concern is, it's pure speculation from us because we don't have any more information until Mike Elias gives his update. I remember at this point last year when everybody reported to spring training, and Mike Elias gave like 4 big updates, because Gunnar Henderson, remember, was dealing with something during spring training that ultimately didn't end up being a big thing. But he gave Gunnar Henderson, Kyle Bradish, and like 2 other guys.
John Means not going to pitch for a while, which we didn't know about, although we probably could have thought, like, could have figured out.
Yeah.
Like, we just didn't know at the time.
And he gave it in alphabetical order, which made me think that he was looking at a sheet beforehand and came up and had it memorized and went right into it. So let's hope that we don't get as many injury updates on the first day of spring training that we got from Mike Elias last year. But there's a possibility. Elias did kind of hedge his bets. He didn't say, when we asked him at Birdland Caravan, nobody's hurt, we're coming into spring training fully healthy. He said, nothing that I'm ready to, and then he stopped himself and said, I will give an update.
Yeah.
First day of spring training. It doesn't behoove the Orioles. They're obviously a very tight-lipped organization. There's a reason that we have found out about a lot of their signings through PR or through the O's Twitter account tweeting stuff out. They're very good at keeping stuff in-house.
Yeah.
It doesn't behoove Mike Elias to let people know that guys are hurt before people have to know. You know, it sucks for us because we're trying to cover the team and we're trying to be honest about who's going to make this team and who's going to be hurt and everything. But for Mike Elias's perspective, in theory, it gives them more leverage in negotiations. For example, the Corbin Burns deal. You know, maybe if fewer teams knew that Kyle Bradish was hurt, it gives him a little bit more leverage to be able to get Corbin Burns. But if people knew that the Orioles were hurting for starting pitching,
Price of the brick going up.
Yeah, price of the brick is going up. The price of the brick is the price of the brick.
Yeah.
So to make a wire reference, I think there's a chance that somebody's hurt and he's not telling us, but that would be nothing but speculation, and we don't know. In terms of who Ramón Laureano is as a player, let me tell you, John, the Mike Elias ties run deep with Ramón Laureano. He was drafted by the Houston Astros, by the Mike Elias Houston Astros, back in 2014 in the 16th round when Elias was part of that front office. Then he was traded to the Oakland A's. Do you know who he was traded for? A right-handed pitcher.
Pass.
Yeah, that's okay. Brandon Bailey.
Okay, I remember that guy.
Rule 5 draft pick by the Orioles in 2020, along with Michael Rucker. He was eventually returned. Did not ever play for the Orioles, but did make a couple appearances, or one appearance maybe, with the Houston Astros in 2020. So there is a lot of ties here with Mike Elias. Played 6 seasons with Oakland after he was traded. Ramón Laureano, not Brandon Bailey. Hit .246 in those seasons with 68 home runs. My first introduction to Ramón Laureano, I don't know about yours, but it was seeing the viral clip of him throwing a ball from the outfield 321 feet to first base. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Chases down a ball in center and takes 3 steps and then just hucks this thing all the way to first base on the line.
Yeah.
He's got an incredible arm.
Yeah, I can't even imagine doing that. I'd be more like the Johnny Damon, having Manny Ramirez cut off my throw from center field. That's my arm strength, and that is the complete opposite spectrum of what we're talking about here.
Yeah. He's always had a good arm. Now, Ramón Laureano's range defensively has gone down. He's 30 years old. He's going to be 30 years old this season. He still boasts a very strong arm, and just like Tyler O'Neill, who has a strong arm, we think from right field is where he's going to play the majority of his time. But you're talking about a guy that has never been a truly above average hitter in terms of his career. And we're 9 months removed from him getting released by Cleveland. Last May, he started out the season absolutely terribly. Hit 143 in 31 games to start the 2024 season. The Guardian said, we can't roster this guy anymore. Yeah. He gets released. The Atlanta Braves pick him up. He hits 296 with 10 homers in 67 games. But we're talking about handing a $4 million deal to a guy who was released by a team 9 months ago. Did the Orioles give a little bit too much to a guy who was just without a home within the past calendar year?
There's probably an argument to that. I think that you're only worth, you get paid what you're worth.
Right.
And that's not to say that there was a team offering $3.9 million, so the Orioles said we'll go for it. This is, in the same way that Tyler O'Neill was worth more to the Orioles than he was worth to anyone else by virtue of the contract that he got, on terms of AAV, I think more than Anthony Santander got in present day money, but he was worth more to the Orioles in that moment. That's why they signed. I don't think it's a lot of money, and I also think that this is the type of thing. I can't imagine the Orioles went into this offseason being we're going to add we're going to sign 7 big league free agents, and we are going to spend tens of millions of dollars, and all of them are going to be on 1-year deals. But this is the type of thing that you just do if you have the money to do it. I wonder what the in-season flexibility is going to be. I wonder what's left, in the budget, if they need to further move, if they need to fill holes like they did in July last year. But I'm not I'm not really I'm kind of agnostic on the money. he's either going to be worth it or it's like such an insignificant sum that like we're not talking about $4 million making or breaking whatever the Orioles want to do otherwise. And that's not something we would have been saying, a year ago.
Right.
So.
And similar to Gary Sanchez getting paid $8 million, like it's not your money. The Orioles don't have a salary cap. And also you pay what you need to get the guy.
Yeah.
Like did the Dodgers need to give Shohei Ohtani $700 million to woo him away from another team? No, but they wanted to make Shohei Ohtani happy.
Yeah.
So they gave him $700 million.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not a huge deal. And in terms of the 2026 option as well, we did a podcast, just a couple weeks ago about how the outfield for 2026, 2027 beyond, that is a very shaky area for this roster going forward because they're set for 2025. But once Mullins hits free agency, once Tyler O'Neill has the potential to hit free agency, you're talking about a very thin group out there. The fact that Dylan Carlson is under team control beyond this year, the fact that Ramón Laureano now has a team option for $6.5 million makes me think that those guys are emergency break glass guys that you can bring back in 2026, where if Tyler O'Neill bolts, Cedric Mullins bolts, and you're sitting there going, oh God, we got Heston Kjerstad and Colton Cowser and that's it. Maybe we have to bring back Ramón Laureano on $6.5 million, or maybe, Dylan Carlson's going to have to step up a little bit more.
Yeah. It's also just a lever that the team can pull. We've talked about Jose Iglesias before, and that his option was picked up because that was just a reasonable thing to do. And then the Orioles traded him because there was a market for it.
Right.
If Ramón Laureano is a lefty killer, like he could, easily be if he has a 130, 135 like WRC plus against lefties in 200 plate appearances, like that's super valuable to the Orioles, and that's worth $6.5 million if you want it, or that could be super valuable to another team that wants it. And like you just keep you keep that asset, for lack of a better term, in your portfolio.
Sure.
My God, what a dumb thing to say.
That is the financial side of John Meoli showing up.
Yeah.
That's the side I have no insight into whatsoever.
Yeah, God, what an idiot. No, me, not you.
I'm an
idiot for saying that.
Mostly me for not knowing anything about finance. So in terms of this outfield group now, we said when the Orioles signed Dylan Carlson, we said, Jorge Mateo could start the season on the injured list. And now we're talking about, a thinner group in the infield. Seems like the Orioles are going to start the season with 5 outfielders. And Dylan Carlson is going to get that 5th and final spot. Now, you add somebody who's getting paid about 4 times as much as Dylan Carlson. Somebody who has a lot more big league experience than Dylan Carlson. Seems to me like unless there is an injury to one of their other outfielders, that Ramón Laureano has kicked Dylan Carlson back down to AAA to start the year.
Yeah, it feels that way. And at the Berlin Caravan, Ryan O'Hearn mentioned that there was 15 guys who could make this team on the position player side pretty reasonably, and I think that's true. And I think now there's 16, not even counting like NRIs who could pop up and make themselves a case. It feels like by virtue of the money that like it's going to take something strange to not have Ramón Laureano on this team. It's going to be fascinating. I believe that adds another like inflexible piece to what's going to be like a pretty inflexible puzzle. When you talk about guys who have options, it's almost exclusively a list of like guys you do not want to option.
Yep.
There's a world where like Heston Kjerstad is finally like off that train and just like rips up his Norfolk shuttle ticket and says, no, thanks. I'm done. I want to live in that world. Personally, I think that would be a good world for him and the Orioles. Jackson Holliday, same boat. Like, no more.
No more.
Then we're talking about guys who are big leaguers, Colton Cowser, Jordan Westburg, Gunnar Henderson. These guys are not going to get option. I don't know where the flexibility is going to be. I also don't know that if you have like really strong depth and like really solid roster that you need that. Like you want to have guys who you can bring up and be able to fill a hole for a week or two, but like it's not going to be a maneuvering situation. I think that's okay.
Right. They're kind of locked in to who they have right now for the most part.
Which means, you need an injury for someone like Kobe Mayo to get a chance. And that's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. Well, that actually ties into our game here, John, because we have 10 questions for each other. 1 question for each position on the diamond, and then I threw in another question for the bullpen. So 10 questions. No question for DH, I'm sorry. But I have questions at each position here, and I want you to give me the position you want to start with, and then I will give you the question that corresponds to that position.
Second base.
Second base. start there. It starts with Jackson Holliday, right?
Yeah.
Gotta ask about Jackson Holliday. Will Jackson Holliday make the Orioles opening day roster?
Yes.
This is one of the easiest questions I have in the books.
Yes, I think so. I think it is going to be a much better season for Jackson Holliday. I think we can just start there. I think that there's a lot of things that are now behind him, whether it's like the will he, won't he of like last year's spring training, whether it's the like growing pains of like being very young in the big leagues and dealing with being Jackson Holliday in the big leagues. Like that's all kind of gone away now.
Yeah.
I trust him as a player and as a person to be in camp with the same mindset as last year, which is like, I'm going to make the team. I also trust him to be better for all the experiences he had. I can't imagine a world where he's not on the team and he's healthy, given that, you know, I don't know that, like we've talked about, Jorge Mateo is going to be a full-time, like playing every day, like ready to go on opening day type participant in spring training. Like that just doesn't leave a ton of options. It feels like it's Jackson Holliday's job to lose. And I don't want to hear like next week them saying like, oh, it's up to him. Like let the kid have some grace. Let him have a little rope. Like if he has a bad week in spring training, he shouldn't worry about it. I think he's going to make the team. And like, I think he should be assured of that.
Yeah. I mean, at last spring training, the will they, won't they? I mean, he had only had a small sample size in AAA before last spring training. I think that's important to keep in mind. Yeah. And then the offseason hype train for Jackson Holliday took off. And at no point did Mike Elias say, Jackson Holliday is going to be on this team and we really believe he's going to crack the opening day roster. But it was kind of assumed from our point. And then he went out and hit 311 last spring training with an OPS close to 1,000. And we thought, well, he's guaranteed. He didn't make the opening day roster. And Tony Kemp was signed off the street and played a handful of games and did not record a hit with the Orioles. Jackson Holliday was up a week later. I said last week, I don't want to see any kind of shenanigans like that. I think if they're going to do any kind of shenanigans like that, it's more likely to affect somebody like Kobe Mayo or Heston Kjerstad than it would be Jackson Holliday. I think this is Jackson Holliday's spot.
Yeah. And we have to keep in mind too, like it gives a feel of shenanigans when like we're talking about these Grayson Rodriguez situation, Jackson Holliday situation. We're not talking about a team now, I hope, in 2025 with a payroll that's probably going to be the highest they've ever had. I think they're right in that range of like 2017.
Right, yeah, they're at like 157 million right now.
Yeah, like really, really high payroll for the Orioles, high expectations, and like very low margin of error. That's the reason why they did the things they did last year in their estimation. Like, let's win these games against lefties. By using a lot of righties, and then we'll bring Jackson Holliday up when we need him. Like they did that because the margins are very fine. And like I would argue, and I did argue, and I still argue that letting Jackson Holliday figure it out and like get to the point where he's at now is like valuable and like can mean the margins are a little looser because you're going to have a really good player down the line. But like I don't know what they would gain from not having him on the team for as much as possible, because he's a stolen base threat too. He's a good defender. Like he does a lot of things. He's not just, and he's going to bat eighth. Like it'll be fine. Like
it's not the end of the world.
Let him take his lumps and if he's going to take lumps, and let him be a real presence at the bottom lineup if he's going to be a presence.
All right. Give me another position here, John.
Can I give you a position?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes. I mean, I have questions for each position, but if you have another question, please.
No, I wanted to ask you a question from your list.
Yeah.
Okay. Pick a position.
All right. I'll pick first base.
All right. First base. Will Ryan Mountcastle top 20 homers?
That's a great question. And here's what I'm thinking when I'm asking this question. Wall's coming back in. Ryan Mountcastle, it's crazy to say, but he hasn't hit 20 home runs since 2020, two? Yeah, when he hit 22 home runs in 2022. 2021, his first full season, he hit 33. And it's gone down each year since then. And I know he's played fewer games as various injuries have cropped up. But he hit just 13 in 2024. Nobody on this roster, save maybe Jordan Westburg, should benefit more from the Wall coming in than Ryan Mountcastle. But I think in order for Ryan Mountcastle to be he's been a 2.5 WAR player over the last couple years. For him to be a true above average, borderline all-star level first baseman, he needs to get that power back in his game that has been lacking the last couple years. I think he needs to hit 20 home runs, and I think if he is healthy, 20 home runs should be the lowest amount that he hits this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy over for me personally. I think that, and he talked about it, and some of the other guys who were impacted talked about it this week. And it's not just that it allows you to feel good about pulling the ball in the air. Like, that's what every big leaguer wants to do. That is how, that's where the money is. Pulling the ball in the air. You hit home runs, pull side power. Like, that's beginning and end of like what a big league hitter wants to do. But it also like took away a lot of like line drives and extra base hits because there's so much, the ball wasn't leaving the park. And like, I think there's a real like world where Ryan Mountcastle's swing materially changed and like his approach materially changed because of that wall. Like nobody, like those like low liners he hits like just over like the right side of second base. Like those are bullets and like those are valuable and he can do that. But like, that's just one arrow in the quiver. Like, I think that he can do all those things, and having spent 3 years using the whole field, like the opposite field is going to be valuable. But like now pitchers are going to come inside to him and he's not going to have to run around the bases. He's going to get to just jog. And like, that's super valuable. And it's going to make all the other parts of his game that he's been forced to hone over the last couple of years even stronger. 20 home runs feels like very achievable to me.
Yeah. Give me another position here, John.
Right field.
Right field. Will Tyler O'Neill post positive defensive metrics in 2025? Now, he hasn't posted positive fielding run value, which is a StatCast metric, since 2021. His speed has decreased significantly over the last several years. He used to be one of the fastest players in all of baseball and used to have outstanding range. He's bulked up. He is a huge, hunking, gigantic, power-hitting outfielder now.
Yeah.
Is he going to be an above-average defender? And could the Orioles use him in center field even?
I think the answer will end up being yes, because I think he will get to play. He will be in the more easier to play location of wherever they are. Anthony Santander would play left field at Fenway Park because that was a lot easier to play than right field. So like Colton Cowser or whoever was in that defensive role would play the harder position. I think they're going to be able to do that and like shield it a little bit. He played with some good defenders in Boston and still had the numbers he did. So I don't want to say like just by having like Cedric Mullins next to him, it'll be better. But I think there's a world where he's fine. Yeah, he's fine. I also have no idea like how I would quantify like what I think somebody's, other than like knowing how to put like the inputs. Like I'm thinking about like what would make it so that he did that and like I don't know, catch the balls that hit at you. Like I hope he does that. Yeah. Like that would be fantastic. Like don't slide and have the ball hit your head. Like we've seen that before. Don't do that, please.
Yeah, exactly. And don't let the ball bounce off the wall. You pick it up and then as you're trying to throw into the infield, the ball hits the back wall and goes nowhere.
Yeah,
You're throwing an empty hand. We saw that with Anthony Santander.
Yeah, Gold Glove finalist
Anthony Santander. All right, I'm going to give you a position now, John. You ask me a question. I'm going to go with catcher.
Okay, catcher. I understand the Orioles have a good one. How many games?
Sanchez?
Yes, and how many games will Gary Sanchez play between catcher and DH and perhaps even first base?
That's a good question, and I'm glad that you've asked it, John.
Paul wrote these questions.
I wrote all of these questions. So Gary Sanchez last year played 89 games. He played 75 games in 2023. He hasn't played fewer than 75 games in a full non-2020 shortened season since 2016. So he has been a starter or a backup who plays a lot in his career. He signed an $8 million deal. I kind of think that the Orioles overpaid him in order to convince, this is again pure speculation, in order to convince him that to sign somewhere where he was going to play fewer games than he would elsewhere. Yeah. When I asked Michael Elias at winter meetings what the breakup would be between Adley and a backup catcher, at that time he couldn't confirm the Gary Sanchez move, in terms of playing games, he said, just look back at the last couple of years, you'll get a good idea of what our breakup is. That means Adley's going to catch for about 73% of the games, and the backup is going to catch for the remainder. Do you think that Gary Sanchez, John, given the information that you have in front of you, do you think he's going to play in more than 75 games? James McCann only played in 69 games 2 years ago and 65 last year.
Yes, I do. As you were answering this, I was listening and I was counting out how many weeks there are in a baseball season.
A lot.
26-ish. You
Wow.
know, if we call it like 6 months.
See, this is the finance brain that I don't have.
Yeah. So that's,
quick math.
this is also journalism math. So like not to be trusted and also probably not correct.
Probably bad.
Definitely wrong. But if you're talking about like 26 weeks, he will play twice a week at catcher, probably. That's 50. Oh gosh, here we go. 52. He would probably come off the bench and hit a lot more than James McCann did too. And that's just the games that he's not DHing actively. Like I think there's going to be days when I anticipate the Orioles are going to be a little more liberal in giving guys days off. You know, I don't think Gunnar Henderson is going to like ask out of the lineup, and they won't take him out of the lineup. But like, I think you're going to see a little less Adley Rutschman at DH this year. It just feels like something that makes a little sense, and you're not going to have like a huge drop off offensively. I mean, yeah, right on right, Gary Sanchez, but you're not going to have a huge drop off. It's not like Adley doesn't DH and James McCann does. Like Gary Sanchez is a better hitter than James McCann. And so I think if you're talking about like his 2 days a week behind the plate, if you're talking about getting like semi-regular DH starts just because you want to have him involved, when you talk about him being either the first or second right-handed hitter, you know, coming off the bench, like there's going to be opportunities there. You think about all the times that like, you know, Ryan O'Hearn and Ryan Mountcastle like hit for each other. Like that is a thing that happens. And there's now going to be opportunities where, you know, he can hit for, God, I mean, he can hit for Essen Kjerstad, and they could put Tyler O'Neill in the game and in the outfield. And
right.
like there's going to be a lot of opportunities. I feel like he is the type of player where the Orioles will find those chances.
The only thing that concerns me about Adley DHing less games, fewer games, is look at his splits between when he DHs and when he catches last year.
Yeah.
Because he hit a whole lot better when he was DHing as opposed to when he was catching.
And he has. I think he broadly has over the course of his career. That feels unsustainable to me. I don't know. We will still never know unless he like sits down and tells us, which I hope, you know, Adley, camera 1, camera 2, Adley, if you're watching, like, please tell us.
Yeah.
Like whatever we find out what happened last year, it feels like, you know, we're going to talk about it as like a before and after thing.
Yeah.
Either that's going to be like something that like altered the trajectory of his career in a negative way, or like it made him and the Orioles see like, let's do this a little smarter. Like maybe he will produce better offensively as a catcher if he's not out there every single day. I don't know if it was after his first season or second season, but like the amount that he plays relative to other catchers, not even just catching, but just plays, is at like the highest level. It's like him and JT Realmuto are like the two guys who like play more than catchers do. Yeah. And like JT Realmuto is going to be 35, 36 next year. He's been really good for a really long time. And like that is an outlier.
Yep.
Catchers don't play that often for a reason. So the Orioles can keep going down the track they're going down and like living with the consequences, good and bad, or they can like pivot. And I would hope that an organization that said they were taking like a hard look at a lot of things, like didn't change a lot of their philosophies or staff, but like maybe want to change how they approach this.
Yeah, it's dangerous to read anything from what you see and hear at Birdland Caravan, you know, before spring training even starts.
Yes.
But Adley was from when we last saw him, obviously the last time we saw him before this, he was, you know, on a team that had just been eliminated from the playoffs. He was in a much better mood. He was jovial. It seemed rejuvenated last time that we saw him at Birdland Caravan. He looked like a new person. And he also, it's hard to tell because they were wearing a jersey over top of a hoodie, but he looked a little bit trimmer, I think. And I'd be interested. He didn't give us any insight into what he did, what his workout routine has been. I'm hoping we can get a little bit more information during spring training, because if you are reading the tea leaves, you could maybe see, you know, a rejuvenated Adley Rutschman coming to spring training.
Yeah, I mean, what he said was, you know, he spent a lot of time talking to like the training staff and the hitting coaches, and like that means like he identified things that were wrong with his body and his swing, and like those are the places that you start. And this is somebody who, you know, we're going back to his freshman year at Oregon State, but like he was not a competitive hitter as a freshman, and he went to the Cape and rebuilt both of his swings and like became the best player in college baseball pretty quickly. It's like he's got that in him. Like I don't think, you know, and it's been a long time since he had to do anything like that. But you know, you go back to those instances and you're like, all right, this person has done it. Like this is an opportunity to do it again if you feel like you need to, and I'm gonna bet on that.
I have a week to get my body trimmer before I show up to spring training. I'm not sure that's going to happen there, John.
I used to just play myself into shape down there. I would like eat healthy and like.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Whole Foods hot bar.
That's
had like a a parking pad at the house we would stay at. Like, it was kind of like covered, and I would just be out there like jumping rope at like 6 a.m. Like,
Wow,
like
good
a
for
real
you.
hardo. Like, never, don't do other stuff like that in my life. Like, not a morning person.
Just during spring training.
Yeah, just during spring training. Yeah.
I mean, I should come back tanner at least.
Yeah.
All right. Another position. Your turn, John. I will give you a position. We have not done center field yet, have we?
We have not. Is that a request? Let's do center field.
Yeah. You asked me the question.
Okay. Will this be Cedric Mullins' last year in an Orioles uniform?
Outstanding question, John. I'm glad you thought of it. Cedric Mullins is entering his walk year. He turned 30 last October. He stayed mostly healthy last year, 147 games, but he has never recaptured the form of that 30-30 season back in 2021. He, has yet to hit 20 home runs since then. He is going to, as all players do when they, especially speedy outfielders, as they age into their 30s, he's going to slow down a bit, and his range will be decreased a little bit as the years go on. Is that the type of player that the Orioles want to pay into his mid-30s? They're going to need outfielders soon, but is Cedric Mullins going to be somebody that the Orioles have at the top of their list when they're looking to sign outfielders next offseason or not?
It feels challenging for me to sit here and say that like him coming back is going to be a priority for this team. This is having said, a lot of things we've talked about in recent weeks about the outfield depth not being something that like they are probably going to be like looking at a board and feeling super excited about as they're sitting around and looking at what the outfield's going to look like in a couple of years. I think there's tremendous value in Cedric Mullins like being what Cedric Mullins has been for this team. I think it's a huge credit to him that the way the last year started, that he ended up getting himself back into form and being the contributor that he was. He is also a man who's like now peerless on this team. Like there's not his group is not here anymore. And he is not blind. He understands he understands
Hayes is gone.
Yeah, Austin Hayes is gone. Anthony Santander is gone. There's not, John Means, another guy from that era of Orioles teams is not here anymore. And it's challenging. There's not a lot of guys who I'd be challenged to find like players in his position who have gotten to free agency and then stayed with the team. I'm not going to be as loud I don't think I was loud, but like I'm not going to be as passionate about thinking it because it doesn't end up happening. But like if Cedric Mullins has a really good year and the Orioles offer him the qualifying offer, like he should just take it and then like go to free agency the next year, like play another year with the Orioles at $23 million and then go to free agency without the draft pick attached to you. Like
qualifying offer that'd be pricey for somebody if he has a really good year.
Yeah. But like he will not hit 44 home runs this year. I don't think, don't clip this out if he does because I'm not going to.
44 home runs for Cedric Mullins would be quite a sight.
But can he have an 815 OPS? Yeah,
it's possible.
Yeah, like he absolutely can. And if Cedric Mullins has an 815 OPS, that's like a 4-win season given what he does defensively and on the bases. Like that would be completely reasonable for that price. Like that would mean that there would be a market and like then you have to think about, does he want to sit around and like wait until the middle of January? Does he want to be one of those guys that's waiting? Like it's all here, but like but there's also a world where he could like take the qualifying off. I don't know. I'm not going to do this again. I'm doing it again. So here we go.
All right. We got more positions. Let's run through these. I'm going to ask you, actually, you know what? You give me a position. We've already done center field, right field. We have done second base, first base, and catcher. So we have third base, shortstop, left field, starting pitcher, relief pitcher.
Starting pitcher.
Who will be the Orioles opening day starter, John?
Grayson Rodriguez.
Why do you say
that?
I
think it's going to be Grayson Rodriguez for like symbolic purposes. I can't imagine that like Zach Eflin would care. I think it would be nice if Zach Eflin got to. I'm sure he would feel nice about it.
He has started an opening day before. He started in 2024 for the Rays. So it's something he has checked off already in his career.
He's done it. Like also like opening day on the road, like not really like the same as opening day at home. It's not, Dean Kramer's probably going to also start the home opener and like that'll be fun too. I think that it would mean a lot. I think it would be like one of those like, all right, like Grayson Rodriguez sees himself as that guy. Like he was pretty clear about it, like during the Corbin Burns era, that like Corbin Burns is nice and he's definitely that guy, but like I could be that guy too.
Yeah.
and injuries made it so that he wasn't able to be that guy down the stretch, but he was pretty good during the season. He was really good down the stretch in 2023. I would say, like, all right, like, not as like a challenge because it's one start. He's hopefully going to make 30 some and like have them all be good. But I would really enjoy seeing him like take that moment and be like, all right, this is going to be like, this is one of those times where like you can be amped up. Like he's somebody who can get amped up and not pitch his best. Like,
yeah,
I would love to see like, all right, you're the opening day starter. Like go set the tone, like, and don't let it, don't have it go badly. Like have it go well. And I'm fascinated to see if they do that. I think there's going to be some good options. Zach Eflin's a good option, but Grayson Rodriguez is a fun option. I'm going to go with that.
It feels like, was it 1992 when Camden Yards opened? I was not yet born, but
okay.
So I'm not speaking from experience, but I've heard this story be told many times.
Okay.
And I believe it was Mike Messina, who's a young player on that team, and Scott McGregor, who McGregor was going to start I think it was 92, was going to start, like, they signed him to start that first game at Camden Yards. But then he went to the manager at that point and said, you got to give the ball to Mike Messina. Maybe I'm conflating two different stories, but it feels like an important moment of passing the torch, and Zach Eflin obviously hasn't started on this team before. This is his first full season with the team coming up, but it would be like a new era of, all right, also, if the Orioles don't acquire in the next several weeks, and it's looking less and less likely by the day that they will acquire an ace, quote unquote, starting pitcher, that is a sign to me that they believe that Grayson Rodriguez can be their ace in 2025. And giving him the ball on opening day would be, a shot in the arm for him and a sign that the team is saying, go, here's the ball on opening day. You're at this point, you've been on the team 3 years. Go out and get him.
Yeah. I vote there. That's my vote.
All right. I'll give you a position. I'll give you shortstop.
All right. Gunnar Henderson.
Sure.
The Orioles shortstop led off 119 times last year. Will he lead off 100 times or more in 2025?
That's a great question. John, he hit 294 out of the leadoff spot in 119 games last year. He was a revelation at the top of the lineup. Colton Cowser got some time in the leadoff spot. He had 25 games at the leadoff. Westberg got 6 games in the leadoff spot. He's going to be fully healthy for the year. I think the Orioles are going to platoon that spot more than they did last year. I think maybe Gunnar gets 100 games out of the leadoff spot, but I also think there's a possibility that if Jackson Holliday starts out the season on fire, that Jackson Holliday could work his way into that top leadoff spot, because it was, I believe, the penultimate game of the season that he was the Orioles' leadoff hitter down to the stretch of the regular season when they were playing games that didn't really matter for their seeding. Jackson Holliday's been a leadoff hitter for his minor league career. Could he be the Orioles' leadoff hitter, and could he supplant Gunnar Henderson there? He
could. I think that the Orioles are probably going to operate the way that like a lot of teams do. Like whoever their best hitters are going to get the most at-bats.
Yeah.
I want Gunnar Henderson to have the most at-bats of anyone on the Orioles this year, and I don't want it to be particularly close. And that's just to say that like also like Adley Rutschman's not going to play every day, but he would get the second most if we're going on that. If we're going on that criteria, I think they've learned the hard way, kind of, that like Adley Rutschman catching and batting leadoff is challenging for a variety of reasons. Like just don't do it. I think Jackson Holliday is a good option to do it sometimes if they need that. I think that Cedric Mullins can still probably do it. I think that Jordan Westberg can probably do it. I think a lot of these guys can do it, but my vote is going to be Gunnar Henderson until proven otherwise.
Okay. We got 2 positions left, relief pitcher and third base, unless I am forgetting one. No, we have left field as well.
Field. Let's do third base, though.
Third base. What would need to happen for Kobe Mayo to make this opening day roster?
Gosh, I mean, someone would have to get hurt.
Yeah.
And I think when I say someone, I mean Jordan Westberg, because I don't think that you are going to have Kobe Mayo be on the major league team to be a backup at this point.
Like if Ramon Laureano gets hurt.
Yes, that doesn't feel like a Kobe Mayo lane. That's not an avenue for Kobe Mayo, because
whose would it be?
In part, that's a fantastic question that I don't. I mean,
what AAA?
Yeah. Who's the last person? Maybe if Emmanuel Rivera gets through waivers. I'm just thinking about all these people who they've claimed and designated in the last 3 weeks. Whose names I can't remember.
Where's Billy Cook when you need him? Pittsburgh.
He's in Pittsburgh. I also think that, like, truthfully, that there's going to be like Kobe Mayo will play some third base this year, and I think that he's going to be primarily a first baseman. And I think that you need to learn how to play first base every day to the extent that he's going to need to. He's not going to do that on the major league bench, but he's going to need to do that like regularly by playing in AAA. So even if they need a third baseman, I think that Kobe Mayo will spend most of the first half of the year playing first base regularly at AAA, and that's kind of going to be his lot in life.
Yeah. I'm just going to run through these final questions because I didn't even finish typing them out, but I have them in my head, John.
Okay, cool.
Left field. What would Dylan Carlson have to do now to make this team? More injuries?
Yeah, I mean, he would have to, or I guess they could theoretically go with six outfielders if you want to, because you have 2 catchers, that makes 8, and then you have 5. You can go 5 infielders, which would be
5 infielders?
Gunnar Henderson.
There are only 4 positions in the infield.
Jackson Holiday, Ramon Urias,
Jordan Westberg,
Ryan Mountcastle, and Ryan O'Hearn. So no, never mind. He would have to. I mean, he would also have to be playing really well and have somebody get hurt.
The nice thing about, Gunnar Henderson can play short and third, and even second. He's done it before. Ramon Urias can play third and second.
Yeah.
Westberg can play all 3, but I don't think that they want to go with 5 outfielders. So I think Dylan Carlson's on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and I'm sure he probably signed knowing that this was a possibility.
Yeah.
So
all right, final question: relief pitcher. Assuming Felix Bautista comes back roaring to go, he's your closer. Who is going to be the most reliable setup man behind Felix Bautista, or ahead of, I should say?
I'm gonna say Sir Anthony Dominguez.
Okay.
And the reason I'm gonna say that is not like valid for what I'm about to say, but I feel like he was.
I'm gonna make a point, and the reasoning is not.
And the reason
valid.
is not supported at all. Like the guy he was when he was pitching in non-save situations last year was like not very good, but like when you put him in there and in a save situation, he was absolutely nails. Like,
yeah,
I think so. So let's put him in all non-save situations and have him just give up home runs all the time. No,
yeah.
I think that is the guy that he is, and like he's going to want to close, and like everybody wants to close, but he's also going to be trying to get like a closer type deal, and like
because he's heading into his
so like
year.
I think he's going to be really good, and I think it's going to be, I think that if there's an all-star in the Orioles bullpen other than Felix Bautista this year, it's going to be him.
Yeah, there's Andrew Kittredge, there's Yennier Cano, there's Gregory Soto, who could all play big parts, big key roles in this bullpen. Danny Coulombe will not be part of that, as he has reportedly agreed to a deal with the Minnesota Twins, so Coulombe is out. But the Orioles bullpen has quite a lot of pieces going into next year, and we shall see. And we have a lot to discuss and a lot to look forward to. John, spring training around the corner. Can't wait.
Yeah.
The BaltimoreBanner.com is where you can get all of your great coverage. John has it covered. Danielle Allentuck, Andy Koska, Kyle Goon. We have so much exciting stuff to look forward to. And boy, is the weather going to be a whole lot nicer next week in Florida than it will be in Baltimore.
This is probably more like meant for Slack than podcast, but like, is everyone going to be down there at the same time? What are we doing here?
Yeah, is anybody going to be in this office at this point next week?
I don't know. I will not be there next week. I will be there the week after.
Gotcha. Well, I'll be there for the very first day. So at All Banner Sports is where you can get all of the great video content. You'll get to see, Charlie Morton throw his first pitch. There was first bullpen session in an Orioles uniform. Oh, also, I'm most looking forward to the fact that they reportedly, rumors say that they are going back to the old jerseys.
The old jerseys. Oh, yeah.
The pre-Nike Vapor Elite jerseys.
Cool.
Bigger numbers, bigger names, less see-through pants. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition.
Yeah. I want you to make sure. I know you're going to be using probably like more professional equipment than I would, but like when you take that first Sugano like bullpen picture, make sure your finger's a little bit over your.
I have
lens.
to, yeah, and I have to not zoom in. I have to do it from as far away as humanly possible.
Finger over the lens, not zoomed in. No context other than just his name.
just yeah. And I'll be sure to misspell it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And we will be back next week in Sarasota, Florida. I'm probably going to have one of our great fine reporters on that podcast. It's been a long time since Andy Koska's been here on the Banner Baseball Show, so we need to get his feet back under him. Thanks so much for tuning in. For John Meoli, I'm Paul Mancano, and we'll catch you next time.